Welcome into Rounding the Bases.
Round the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg. It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.
Hey, everybody, welcome into another episode of Rounding the Bases presented by Community America Credit Union, invested in you. Well, here we are. The podcast now moves on. The world moves on to the month of April, which means baseball season, means that I'm knee deep into it. Recording this a little bit in advance. We always do. We try to record these in advance. And really, for me, with the intense baseball schedule, 18th season of doing Royals baseball, I tell, friends, my family gets it now that I'll see in October or maybe November. That's just the way it is. And so it's nonstop. So very lucky by my incredible executive assistant, executive producer that handles everything that I do, speaking and books and the podcast. Ashley has me booking these out months in advance so that we can handle the baseball season and continue to make sure that Rounding the Bases is going strong 52 weeks of the year. Shout out to my friends at Chief of Staff Kansas City. Whether you're in Kansas City or around the country, if you're looking for a resource in finding a job or hiring someone, they're just such great people. They get people, and that's an important piece of the business. Check them out, chiefofstaffkc.com, making connections that matter. My connection today, by design, is a baseball guest, or at least the release of this podcast today is a baseball guest. A lot of times I'll have somebody from Major League Baseball, but I've always been impressed with the people that maybe not everyone knows about. And certainly in his neck of the woods, everybody knows about him. But there are so many people in this game, we like to refer to them as baseball lifers, that have given their whole life to baseball. And I think today's guest certainly epitomizes that. Today, I'm joined by a celebrated sports analyst who has been promoting collegiate sports excellence for 3 decades and counting. His name is Tim Neiman, the renowned head baseball coach at DeSales University and CEO of the Neiman Legacy Network. Over the course of his storied career, his outstanding impact in sports and leadership has driven success from dirt fields to dugouts across the country, teaching more than just a game, but lessons in legacy that inspire others to maximize all that their talent has to offer. I think that those of us in the Major League Baseball world, sometimes we get locked into that world, understandably. And then we hear about what's going on in the minor leagues. We hear about college. We don't always get a chance to slow down and see it because we're so busy with what we're doing. The same could be said for my guest today, the longtime and soon to be retiring head coach, Tim Neiman. Much, much more to do. And Tim, as you and I record this quite a ways in advance, you're still knee deep into baseball season and more to come. How are you?
I'm doing well, Joel. Appreciate you having me. I'm most grateful. Thank you so much.
Oh, well, the feeling is mutual. It's great to have you on and to be able to tap into your expertise. I think I described that right. I'm exaggerating here. A million baseball lifers, right? And whether that be the coach or the scout or the clubby or whoever it is that signed up for this great game years ago and never got out of it. And I'm guessing that's the case for you too, a lifetime of baseball.
Yeah, I think so. I always tell my players that, the biggest compliment I could give you is you're a baseball guy, and I think you'll end up leading into being that baseball lifer. Like, you enjoy the game, you respect the game, you're a student of the game, all those kinds of things play into, that description. So, I think people look at me, it's like, hey, he's a great guy, nice guy, but that's a baseball guy. And it's been ingrained on me since I was a young guy and a young kid through my dad, and now into my 2 sons, Nolan, who's a head coach at Manatee High School in Bradenton, Florida, and Doc, who is the assistant coach at St. Joseph's University. So, I'm thankful for them that they followed a little bit of my footsteps. We're not making a ton of money, obviously, but, we don't work a day in our lives, Joel, and that's, I can really say that for 36 years. I haven't worked a day in my life.
See, that's the beauty of loving what you do, because anyone that knows college athletics, and certainly smaller college, you never stop working, yet it doesn't feel like it.
Yeah, you're not away from it. You're just not. It's, you're responsible for them 24/7, 365 days a year. as you alluded to a little bit, I do some broadcasting, and you get to the game, we shoot an open, we talk about the game's over, do a little wrap up, and I go home. And I'll think about the game a little, but I go home. I'm not responsible for all the Lehigh Valley Iron Pigs AAA players. I just go home. But in college, we're in the Dominican Republic recently, and you just don't rest easy. Stay on the property. Don't wander out of Boca Chica. We'll be taken good care of. But you don't know. It's 35 guys you're just you're responsible for, and they're 35 souls. You never know where they're going.
Yeah, that's like being a parent times 35 or whatever the number is. You've done that for a long time. The game, the world has evolved. It always will. It'll be different when your sons are getting to your age and they're talking about their retirement. That's just right. The game's different today than it was when you got into it. There's something though, and I hope to share this with my audience, which a lot of people listening to this are baseball fans. Some won't be, just like my speaking audience is. But there's something, the quote that I always love to use is from Buck O'Neil, the late Buck O'Neil, who said, "Nothing better than baseball. It teaches all the lessons." And I actually moved to Kansas City 2 years after his passing, so I never met him. But I'm proudly on the board of the Negro Leagues Baseball Museum here in Kansas City. And so I've felt for years that I know Buck. My interpretation of that quote, "Nothing better than baseball, it teaches all the lessons," is that baseball to me is so much like life because it is involving so much failure. How do you handle that failure? And how do you get up and do it again the next day and the next day and the next day? Because I often say that football players, basketball players, baseball players, they all work hard just like any other sport or any other profession. But the rest of them are working hard for that one day. In baseball, it's the next day and the next day. College, maybe it's 3-4 games a week. What do you take from that quote? What are the lessons in baseball that apply to life?
Well, that's absolutely right. I think baseball is an unbelievable vehicle to teach life lessons, and that's something I evolved into. I think we might talk about a little bit. I wrote a book called "What Is Your Legacy," and it's leadership, life lessons, all those kinds of things, and some baseball, obviously, some true stories. But I've broken that down into love and power, giving, accountability, commitment, yearning, all those kinds of things. And I learned at an early age, Joel, that the wins, we won a lot over the years in spite of me. Thank goodness. I just try not to mess them up. But and we've won a lot. But I really realized very early in my career that you don't remember a whole lot of that stuff. You remember the relationships. You remember the kids. I always tell the kids, look, I'm not in your social media stuff. I don't go up in it. It's your business. Just know that when it's out there, it's out there. But when you graduate, you will be my Facebook friend, if you will. I want to know what you're doing, how you're doing. What do you need? You married? Are you have kids? What do you need? I'm here for you. And I think baseball is tremendous. And it is built, they say it's built on failure and adversity. 3 for 10, you're making a lot of money. If I'm fixing cars and 7 of them I didn't do too well on, probably not in business very long. So you have to get up, and that short memory, I think, is critical. You can't take that at bat to the field with you. And you can't take the error to the at bat. There's so many examples of that. And again, you mentioned football. Well, those guys, man, they work hard. It was an awesome Super Bowl, but they have all week to recharge and recalibrate and get themselves ready to go ahead and play. I think baseball, obviously, you and I would agree, the greatest sport ever. It's a chess game with individuals and people. And at the end of the day, all the analytics and all the data, all the other things that have been brought to bear are all fine. The organizations that can blend those things together will succeed for the long term. But it's still people, it's still human beings, and it's still their emotions and everything else. And I think there's so many lessons for them that they've learned over the years, and I think it's critical that they continue to do that, and people in the game realize that too, especially at the college level. Pro level, a little bit different. It's livelihoods. I get all that, but still, I think if I was lucky enough to manage minor league baseball, perhaps there'd be some relationships in there, I'm sure. And sometimes just a hand on the shoulder or a pat on the back, so, hey, it's okay. We're going to have some issues. Why don't we take a look at what happened and move forward as quickly as we can? And, I think you go from there. So, yeah, you're absolutely right, Joel.
I mean, that's the beauty of the game. And yeah, I do. I say this oftentimes to an audience. I'll say, look, I am not recommending that any of you have a success rate of 30% and consider yourself good. But if you can figure out how to manage failure the way those 30%ers do in baseball, then you're on to something. How much has that, before I get into talking about the book, how much has that changed over the years? Meaning the ability to handle failure has been part of the game since well before Babe Ruth played it. But the modern day ball player is different. They have more technology. They have more tools. I hear the old schoolers that'll say paralysis by analysis. I think that's an easy way out. Sometimes I think, to me, that's a little bit of code for I don't like change. And yes, I would love for the game to be the way it was when I first started broadcasting or when I first started playing it. I'm sure you would love for elements of the game to be the way they were, but that we're not in 1960 or 70 or 80 or 90 or 2000 or even 2010 right now. The guys that are coming into the game today, Bobby Witt Jr. and his generation is different than the generation of, say, Alex Gordon, or the difference of generation to Pat Burrell. Those guys, and even, the generation today coming in is different than Bryce Harper. I mean, it just is. That's what happens in 15 years. No different than your kids. But I think it's really interesting, and I'm curious what you're seeing, because this is very representative of any profession and any office that you would work into, of, say, a Gen Z kid. They expect to have that technology. They are going to talk in ways, and I am overstating this because it's not everyone, but I think it applies to a lot. They are going to talk in words of like, I'm grounded. I'm where my feet are. I'm in the moment. I'm present. You didn't know what any of that stuff was when you came up playing or you started coaching, but they know more than we knew. And now I think we need to lead and coach based on that, because they don't know any other way. How much has that world changed in coaching and players and what you're seeing?
Well, I think that's true. This generation, and maybe in the last not real long, maybe last 6 to 8 years, instant gratification, right? It's instant gratification. So they get it everywhere in the classroom and in technology, or wherever they are. There's an instant output of good or bad, basically. Mm-hmm. And they know that. They do have all the tech now. We have the Rapsodos and TrackMans and all that stuff. And I think those are great tools if you use them properly to teach. They're very visual these days. You see all the iPads in the dugout and all that stuff. The things that I see, I can relate to them, but it doesn't resonate unless I show them either in a video or some kind of a data track that they can relate to. Mm-hmm. And I think that has really changed. I mean, to give a quick example, we had a young man who's actually, I wrote about in the book, is actually killed in a car crash, and it's almost 4 years already. So, but he was up there, and he would take a swing, and the ball would come off his bat, spinning like that. I was like, Nick, you're kind of getting around the ball, and ball's coming off your bag. We got to try and stay inside the ball, create some backspin, blah, blah, blah. And he looked at me like I was, from outer space. So I took him to the Rapsodo, and I showed him how the ball came off the bat. And he goes, oh, I see. So then he got back in the cage, and, just baseball stuff. Kept his hands inside the ball and started hitting, backspin balls a long way. And he had a big smile on his face. But the key was then, A, he saw it. And then B, if he got around the ball once in a while, which was the exception, I could ask him, all right, tell me about that. And he could come back and say, coach, I got to round the ball. I got to get inside the baseball. And that's how they learn. And it didn't dawn on me till 4 years ago, to be honest with you. What do you mean you can't? I see what I see. How can you not apply that? And that seems to be the major difference. But it's instant gratification. It really is. And this concept, there's a lot of travel sports, baseball included.
Mm-hmm.
And it's created a me kind of a thing and an I and a selfish and, that sort of thing. And I think that resonates only through the players up through the parents. And they have a hard time, a little bit of a culture clash when they get to me. It's like, I don't care. I don't really care what you did. What are you going to do for me? And I think we've been successful with that. And again, back to a life lesson, it's like, I've got to sacrifice for the team. I would say, and I'm not smart enough to come up with this, Joel, but Harry Truman said, I think, isn't it amazing what we can accomplish if nobody cares who gets the credit? Yeah, that's correct. It's a team. You've got guys helping you. I got guys helping me. And I mean, it's a team. I don't care who gets the credit here. Nowhere in the lineup card do I put date of birth. Nowhere. Whether you're freshman, junior, sophomore, that's nowhere. Nobody's asking for your birth certificate. You hold out the arms for the uniform. We're on the same page here. I don't care who gets the credit. We're trying to win baseball games.
Yeah. So well said. And again, that's never changed. The temptation of making it a me moment, because baseball is a very individual sport. I mean, I can't think of another sport where it is so individually based with that many people on a roster, right? I mean, but put aside tennis or golf or figure skating or swimming. I mean, it is not an individual sport, yet every moment involves one-on-one. And so, so many of these kids, I would say at any of these levels, college, minors, major leagues, everyone on a roster, from the best guy to the bottom guy, has been the best player on his team most of the time. And now suddenly they're not. And so my question, and I'm curious, and I think, again, that this would apply to the baseball and the non-baseball audience, is how do you, two-part question, Tim, how do you get buy-in? I mean, is that finding the right kids that fit? Or, I mean, that's got to be part of it, I assume. How do you find buy-in? And two, how do you communicate with the younger generation now? Because I tell audiences all the time, if it's an older audience or it has older audience, I think it's on us. Because if we're going to expect them to figure us out, we're never getting anywhere. That's not a diss on them. We've got life experience and we've got wisdom. But if we're going to sit there and say, you're young, you don't know anything, then you're putting up that fence right away. How are you communicating with that younger generation as you're finishing up your final year as a head coach? It's different than when you were 1989, 1990. How are you communicating? How are you getting buy-in?
It all comes down to culture. I mean, it really does. And I think it takes time to establish that. And I think honesty, integrity, all those kinds of things. I think from a pure baseball standpoint, I used to work for the Pirates for a little bit. I was an associate scout, if you will. But I worked for a guy named Joe Consoli, who signed more major leaguers than any scout ever walked the face of the earth. Amazing guy. And we used to look at guys and evaluate guys. So I appreciate everything I learned from him. It's easy to identify your 9 best guys, like your 9 best individuals, but that doesn't necessarily win. What we want in the culture, and nobody gets the credit, I want my best configuration of 9, the best accumulated 9. That group, that's a group that may win, and it may not be one of the best 9 individuals. And they all know that, and I think coaches need to be honest. I think young coaches especially make mistakes of overdoing everything. They hand you a guideline, a binder full of policies and guidelines and covenants. And yeah, we all need structure. We all need boundaries. But basically, I have one overall rule in the club is don't embarrass the baseball team. Talk about life lessons again and culture and all that stuff. Baseball needs to mean enough to you that if something occurs that you need to make a decision on, hopefully you make the right one. And if it's not, there's consequences, which is what we have in this world. So there's consequences for your action, but we need you. They all come in and are boys, they're 18, they leave when they're men, 21, 22. Yeah. Excuse me, in college baseball, with all the COVID and the extra years, you got 25-year-olds playing in Division I, which is really scary. Not sure what college athletics that was meant to be. Another topic for another day.
Yeah.
But I think coaches need to be honest. This kids are going to see right through you. And you've got to kind of groom, and I do this, I groom their, I can step on a toe or two once in a while. The old school me got some other stories, but we can, I think more than now, they need those verbal bouquets. It used to be one time I'm going to hammer you, and 10 times I'm going to say, oh, we're going to be okay. That may be more like 50 to 1 now. Mm-hmm. It's going to be okay. These are the things you do well. And, it's always not what we say, it's how we say it, Joel. You know that. I mean, and for these kids, you can say some things in a certain way, start out nice, kind of put the meat in there, not so good, finish nice. And you give them those verbal bouquets that give them confidence, which I think they're quickly able to walk away from that. I didn't do well. And they're going to, in the new book I'm writing too, it's called Team Coach, Transfer of Blame. Somebody else's fault. And we try to get them to be responsible for everything. No, it's yours. You're the one that's deciding or how you're working out in the off season, et cetera. So, I think that's kind of key.
Let's talk about the first book, and people can get that on Amazon. Just look up and we'll have it in the show notes. What is Your Legacy? Leadership, Life Lessons, Business and Baseball, a blueprint for your personal and professional journey. That gets back to what I was suggesting at the start of the interview about the life lessons of baseball. Tell me about this book, and a two-part question on this one. The first one's simple. Give us a little bit of an idea of what the book is about beyond the title. I think you've got a good idea on the title. We've got a good idea. So what's the book about? And two, what would you say, this is a hard one, it's hard to talk about yourself, what is your legacy?
Yeah, that is a hard question. I get a lot of who'd have thunk it. Coach Neiman ran he wrote a book, right? And it came out of, look, I spoke at the ABCA convention. It was virtual. I got chipped out of being on stage, but I flew to Greensboro. It was virtual, and I talked about this. They asked me to speak about something other than nuts and bolts, X's and O's, which I was glad to do. So I put a little 45-minute presentation together and did all this. And then I'm like, there's a book here somewhere. And as I'm trying to, in my post-coaching days, and I try to enter into, speaking and inspirational stuff. I don't really like motivational. If I motivate you, we may be motivated to get this, podcast over with. I'm trying to inspire you to give you something to stay with you. So I'm like, all right, we did it. And so it is legacy, and it's an acronym. So that's how my brain works. So there are 6 things: love, empower, giving, accountability, commitment, and yearning. And all those things I talk about in the book and give examples and real life examples of, that I've had over the years that then equate into a real life scenario, whether it be personally or professionally. And I think I've done that. I think it can be an easy book for lots of folks to go back and reference if need be. And I think it's good for all ages as well. I think, you're a young guy. I've had some teams that have bought the books for their players. I've had organizations that have bought the books for their employees. And that's the point. And it's simple, and it's easy read, and it's me talking. As far as my own legacy, that's certainly a hard question. I mean, the way I look at it, I guess on my tombstone, I'm a great guy. I'd be really happy with that. He's a great guy. And maybe underneath, baseball guy. I try to help others. There's an old quote that, we've all heard: you've done nothing in this world till you've done something for others. And I kind of live by that. And I really like helping people on my joy comes in their success. I really am proud of all our alums and everybody that played, but also very proud of people that have entered in my life, that didn't play for DeSales University. So I guess that's it. Humility is a big part of all of us. And we must also remember that it's not us. We didn't do it. We did it with the help of so many others.
I love that. There's so much in there too. And I also like in the acronym, and by the way, I love acronyms too, because they're easily memorable. They're easy to remember. By the way, not just for the people we're teaching, for us to remember it too. Seriously, like you know, that legacy acronym is a part of who you are now. You could teach off it at any given moment. You already were teaching off of it. That's the beauty of this book. I'm curious, you go back to 1989, I think, was your first year at DeSales. I don't want to age you, Tim, because I got as much white hair as you, but I was still in high school back then. And you probably weren't all that far removed from high school at that point either, right?
That's correct. I was about 8 years older than my oldest senior at the time. So, and I never forget our first team meeting. They were not good. They played on what might have been a middle school field with wooden benches and round posts and Mickey Mouse backstop. And I literally, after I got hired, I guess I should have checked the field out first. I walked back behind the gym, and I'm like, oh, I literally had tears in my eyes. I'm like, what did I get myself into? But then we dug in. But at that first team meeting, they were 6-16 the year before. And I didn't know what I had. I had a couple kids I knew. And I just said to them, you talk about culture and those kinds of things and believing. I said, look, we're going to win six. Okay, you won 6 games in a year. In a year, we're going to win 6 games in a week. I promise you. And we went out and we're 19-13, I guess. And I think I've only had one losing season since. And again, I don't play. I own a lot of losses, got a lot of wins, but those losses are mine. What could I have done better that day? But man, those are some major memories from where we were to where we are now, playing in a stadium at Wyland Park.
Yeah, pretty wild to have a career now, that 36th and final season, 850 plus wins. By the way, as we're recording this, I don't think you're at 850. If you're not at 850 by April, I'll go back and edit this.
But I'm doing something wrong.
No, you're going to be fine. I just wanted to round it up. I mean, whatever it is, that's a lot of wins. And I remember asking Albert Pujols, there's my big name drop here, about his final season, about what if you're one shy of 700, would you come back? And he's like, nope, I'm not in this for the numbers. That's not, the numbers are whatever they are. And I'm sure you feel the same way too. I mean, especially after what you just described for that first season or what they were coming off of. There's no way in your mind that in 1989 you could have envisioned having this conversation with these numbers, I assume, right?
No doubt. I mean, I had no idea. I mean, I had vision. I think vision's critical for what you're doing outside of baseball and what I intend to do outside of baseball. And you got to execute and go do that. But I never thought I'd be in this situation. And you're right. I'm not about the numbers. Again, if I have a big season, I'd be very close to 900. And then, why don't you come back for another season? It's time. It's time. It's time to move on and have somebody else kind of take the lead and continue, the legacy, if you will. But, to kind of forge their own, experience and successes. So, but I thought, I had some audacious goals, like 5 years we're going to be in an NCAA tournament. We're going to be nationally ranked and, be known across the country in Division III baseball. And it took me 7. So it wasn't too bad.
But it's interesting how things change too. I don't know if you where those big audacious goals were supposed to take you in your mind. I mean, just from my experience, it was like, all right, one day, if I make it in TV, I want to get back and work in one of the 2 markets that I grew up in, either Philadelphia, where I was there until I was 13, or Chicago. If I could land in one of those 2 places, I grew up watching Don Tollefson on the news in Philadelphia. And then at one point was his guest on a pregame show. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm being interviewed by Don Tollefson because I'm in visiting with the St. Louis Rams and he wants my opinion. Wow, it feels like I made it. And I want to go back to Chicago and I want to be Mark Giangreco, who was like the Don Tollefson of Chicago. Or maybe one day I want to be on SportsCenter. And then I don't know if any of that was possible or not. I just found a place eventually for me, Kansas City, where I'm like, I'm good. Like, this is great. I didn't dream of this because I didn't know it existed. And I'm guessing, but you tell me if I'm wrong, that like you didn't grow up dreaming of being the head baseball coach at DeSales, yet it obviously provided the most fulfilling of careers and legacy that we've talked about. What point did it click where you said, maybe I could do something that might be perceived as bigger or better? Or because I still get asked that all the time. What's your next move? I'm like, my speaking business, all the other stuff I'm doing. But as long as they want me here, I'm good here. I love it here. When did that click for you?
Yeah, that's a good point. And again, I kind of referenced, these are these goals at DeSales. And as a young coach, I thought I'd be gone. I'd be out, in 10 years. It's a stepping stone into something else. Go to Division I or, pro ball always interested me. I turned down a few jobs of managing, Helena, Montana is one of them, and then doing free agent scouting. I had 2 young sons, so to kind of answer your question there at DeSales, especially, it got to the point where, this is a great place for my kids to grow up, get an education. They both went to school there. And it's just a wholesome place. And I'm okay doing what I'm doing right now. But I do think, and I've done this at DeSales and I continue to do it now, is to try and reinvent yourself inside that, that realm of where you're at personally in your life professionally. So I've done that a few times with, kind of venturing into a book and doing these other kinds of things. But I think that's important. Always trying to push forward, adding to facilities. The stadium we built, it's unbelievable. We'd like to see turf now. So that's kind of reinventing yourself. I did athletic fundraising for 5 or 6 years, raised quite a bit of money, and still coach baseball. And that was okay. That was kind of cool. If you ask me now, what would be my next audacious thing? I want to be the bench coach for the New York Yankees. That's what I want to do. And actually, I have a little bit of an in. A senior on my team is the nephew of Brian Cashman. So we'll see. I'm starting to tease him a little since he's going to graduate, maybe for a day. Suit me up, put me in a uni. I'll get in Aaron Boone's ear for the entire game, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, that is a baseball guy's answer right there. All right, let me get to my baseball-themed questions for a baseball guy. Biggest home run that you have hit professionally, what is it?
Yeah, well, I think going to then Allentown College in 1989, which turned into DeSales University in 2000, I left a sales job in sporting goods and then doing really well. Left that because my yearning was I wanted to coach college baseball. I want to be in baseball. I want to get paid for being in baseball. So I left there, went to Downtown College for a lot less money. And you know what? I've been happy ever since. So that would be the professional. And personally, of course, we all say our families and our wife, and we have 4 kids, 7 grandkids. So that goes without saying. But if I didn't, I always wonder if I didn't make that move, what would I be doing now 36 years later? Still selling sporting goods? I don't know. I don't know. But I couldn't be more happy with that decision.
There aren't a lot of people that get to do what they love and do it for so long. And that's what we don't know when we start these journeys. And we become lucky if we find it. And you found it. I've been lucky because I found it in a way that it's everything I could have hoped for. I just didn't know what it was. And so that's the beauty of the journey. What about a swing and a miss along the way, Tim? And what did you learn from it?
There's certainly those. I talk about reinventing myself. I began a company, I think it was in 2009, called the Neiman Sports Group. And basically we were managing facilities, a dome, an ice rink, an indoor batting cage, that kind of stuff. And, I wish on the surface, man, that sounds like fun. That's a lot of, but you're responsible for lots of people. And I wish I would have kind of done more research because there's a lot of hands in that cookie jar that it really all ended up being was me trading money for, half a dozen years. And sometimes there was a situation I wrote about in the book, didn't mention names or where, but, contractually, the guy that I was in bed with, if you will, was stuck me basically for 2 months of payroll, 2 months. Mm-hmm. So the kindness of my heart, I did the right thing, and I coughed it up myself. And I wish, and I thought still to this day think it's the right thing, but I wish I would have went back initially and tamp down the emotions and the excitement and kind of think the whole thing through. But again, lots of experiences I've gotten, met some people, and I'm better for it today.
That's the way you get better. Okay, how about small ball to you? Let me ask this both ways. What is small ball to you on the baseball diamond? Because every coach is teaching it or should be teaching it, of course, and some get those fundamentals better than others. What is small ball to you? I'm not an Earl Weaver guy. I mean, I liked Earl Weaver, but I don't think you could win on the 3-run homer. So what is small ball on the field to you? What is small ball off the field to you?
I made a career out of get them on, get them over, get them in. I mean, it's unselfish style of play that we require all our players, whether you're hitting fourth or eighth or leadoff, you have to be situationally good at hitting the baseball. And it's interesting in the big leagues, teams that win sort of play that way a little bit in the postseason. Mm-hmm. You see a big change during the season, not so much. They don't get paid for the bunts and, hitting the ground ball behind the runner at second. But in the big leagues, when it's time to win, they do. I think small ball off the field, and I think it's something I've learned again very early, surround yourself with great people. Even if they're better than you, which I've done a lot of times, I want to know what they know, and, we'll move on. Surround yourself with great people because you cannot accomplish anything by yourself. You need the help. You need the assistance. Seek out mentors. Be a mentor. I've always had great mentors in my life. I think that is critical to your mental health, your professional health, and certainly your personal life.
Good stuff. Great advice for everybody, no matter what you do. 4 final questions as we round the bases. The first, tell me about the second book and what we can expect with that.
It's underway. It's called Team Killers. And I always thought about, hey, there's 5 ways to do this, 7 ways to do that, 38 ways to do. How about you tell me what to look out for? Excuse me. How about you tell me what not to do? So I kind of went through, it was our 2004 season. We had a little turmoil, but I've gone through like 6 different areas where I thought affected that club. Being content, transfer the blame, drama, contempt, panic, and contamination. And I think you take those and you can apply them to all kinds of businesses and organizations and teams. And I think things start to come off the rails. 1 or 2 or 3, or maybe, if you get to contamination, might be time to turn the page. But I bet you a bunch of these toxic traits, if you will, are present in what's not going well within your team, with your organization. So looking forward to it. I would say a spring release at some point. It'll be ready to go.
All right. Second question as we round the bases. You talked earlier in the podcast about taking your team down to the Dominican. And, during that time of year, you're looking for warm weather places to go and get them on a field and hopefully experience some culture and some different things too. You told me before we went on that you're there in the Dominican and your players look over and see a rather famous player. Tell me about that exchange, because I got to think for a bunch of young aspiring ball players that was a big one.
As you know, in the Dominican Republic, especially in the Boca Chica area, there are tons of pro guys and all that kind of stuff. So we're playing at the Air Force Academy, not the academy, they're actually Air Force Base, playing their club, and they rolled out a bunch of minor leaguers against us, including this guy's brother. So our kids recognize Juan Soto, who just got done with a BP session, and Juan was very nice. He called them out, got right in the middle of a team picture. There's call him a $700 million man right in the middle of our DeSales University baseball team. It was so cool. We played against his brother. His brother played first base against us that day right after that. So cool. And just being down there in that environment. But one major thing, if I quickly point out, is we visited an orphanage in San Pedro de Margarita, known for all the shortstops, I guess. And that was such a moving experience, something I write about in the legacy book and giving. We gave our time and gave them T-shirts. I mean, what a life-changing experience that was.
Yeah, that's so special. And those kids and when I say those kids, I mean, your players will never forget it. And the kids in that orphanage may not either, but it's amazing how we end up sometimes getting more of it just by giving. And so what a cool and unique experience. Okay, third question as we round the bases. You've got plenty of experience doing what I do in my world. And, you referenced a little bit not having to take it home with you at night. The broadcast world is, I didn't play, I didn't coach, but a lot of those that move into it say, well, if you can't if you can't play anymore or you can't coach anymore, you're not doing that anymore, the next best thing is being in the broadcast booth. And I'm sure on some nights it's even better. Tell me about your broadcasting and what you like about it.
Sometimes it's painful too. There's many games like minor league baseball, done a lot of Reading AA games and now AAA games. I mean, you watch a game, we just put a 3-2 count up on the scoreboard and start with that. Because it seems like every at bat ends up 3-2. I love it. I think I work with a partner who's just amazing and very prepared, and he's a great play-by-play guy. And by the time I think about what I want to say, he already said it. So he goes, just talk about the game, and which I can do. And I think we have the ability to talk about steroids and Pete Rose or whatever when the game's out of hand, which you have to do once in a while.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it, and I get to see, especially when Double A and Reading, got to see the upcoming players. I know you and I had a conversation months ago about some players, and I get to see the guys coming up through the system, and the scout and me can still recommend somebody or give an opinion about somebody to other folks in the game, which really I appreciate. But I really enjoy it. I think I could do it all the time. And again, I go home after it's over, and I didn't worry about what we did right or wrong. Yep. But I will. I think you've probably done this too. I will tape the telecast to see what I could have done better or not. And you always learn something, obviously.
Yeah, you do, good and bad. Okay, final question, the walk-off. It's the best and worst question, because when you've got 800 plus wins like you do, how do you identify a moment? But do you have a favorite moment in your career?
Yeah, and it's funny, Joel. I remember the losses much more than I do the wins,
of course,
and certainly the kids. But if there was one, we got to the World Series in 2003. So we had the bases loaded, 2 runs in. Pitcher from Otterbein, Ohio, was struggling. He just walked the previous 2 guys, and talk about little ball. I'm gonna make him throw a strike. So we had a hitter at the plate that went 2-0, and typically we'd make this guy throw a strike. I said, I'm going to let him hit. I'm just going to let him hit. And he looked at me with big eyes and go ahead and hit. Next pitch, and I tapped my assistant coach on the shoulder, and I said, there's a grand slam coming. Next pitch, he hits one out in the trees over the left field wall. We're up 6-0. Game's over in the first inning. It's over. There's no way they're coming back from this. We were just too good at the time. And, I think that's a moment that just absolutely sticks out of my mind. That was precious. And, we got a chance to play in Appleton, Wisconsin in the 2003 World Series.
Pretty cool stuff. And so many years worth of memories dating back to 1989 and wrapping up this year. And then, of course, much more to come between the books and the broadcasting, and hopefully that seat in the Yankees dugout as well. That's the big audacious goal. Get in Aaron Boone's head. Just hopefully not against the Royals. But Tim, it's been great to meet you, to be able to share a little bit of your story. Congratulations on a career that spans so many decades, which means that all of those kids, you were able to impact their lives. And I know that they impacted yours as well. Good luck the rest of this season and everything you're doing after the season. Really appreciate you spending time here on Rounding the Bases.
I really appreciate you, Joel. I thank you so very much for having me, and look forward to staying in touch.
Yep, we'll stay in touch, and we're in Philly this year, so maybe I'll see you there as well. We can talk about that offline. Tim Neiman has been my guest. Thank you, everybody, and best of luck the rest of the year.
It's around the bases. Everybody knows Joe Goldberg.